Hey, you are now listening to the Graceway Podcast. Let's talk with special guest host Jeff Adams.
Hey, y'all. Good morning, good afternoon, whatever time it is when you're seeing this. I'm Jeff Adams, and I'm here with Pastor Tim Dunn, and we're here to talk. And following up on just another amazing study of 1 John, I'm loving it. I hear the buzz around the church. People are loving it. And man, it's just been great. So when you and I get together, we very quickly kind of shift into macro gear.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And so I want to do that if I can, because you were making a point this morning that as soon as you were making this point, I'm going from micro to macro, and your point was this. Of course, the theme of the entire message is who are you?
Yeah.
And how our identity is what shapes our beliefs, and how our beliefs are what shape our behavior.
Yeah.
And you worked that thing masterfully for the whole message. And you started, you came back.
Sure.
I mean, you turned it inside out.
Sure.
But I want you to think macro for a second.
Okay.
And that's where your mind naturally goes, because I know you.
Yeah.
So when you think of our society as a whole, and it's been scary to me, the last several months to a year during the pandemic, there's been so much bad behavior. There have been people that have wanted to take over the Capitol. There's been people that have been in the streets doing this and that and the other, and this is not a political statement. It's just like there's so much hatred. There's so much name-calling. There's so much bad behavior. You and I understand that stems from bad beliefs. What does that say about the identity of the United States of America?
Yeah. Wow.
Does that?
Yeah. Let's take it to up to 200,000. Well, I mean, we could talk a lot about the fabric of these United States. Obviously blessed by God, but obviously a very independent idealism or ideology from inception, right? And I think for me, it actually, for some bizarre reason, was a little calming to me as I thought about it, because I think that what COVID did, I think what George Floyd did, I think what elections, all of those kind of things, is they showed two things. One, how individualistic our identities are, and the kind of echo chamber that gets created. So I view myself through the lens of me and those nearest to me who tend to be very much like me.
Right.
We don't live with a lot of divergence and diversity, even though it's increasingly accessible. I don't know if you saw the study. The white population is going down now.
Quickly.
Very quickly. So individualism is killing us. And I just think the fault lines in behaviors represent beliefs. We have fault lines there, but even more than that, fault lines in our identity. The over-identification with a politician, the over-identification with a news source, the over-identification with, any number of 100 things. And you couple that with the individualism, with that streak of, historically violent independence, right? And you have a really volatile cocktail.
Yeah, and you talked about, I guess we could call it tribalism, where people are wearing sweatshirts that identify them with a particular sports team or a particular product.
Right. Yeah.
And it's almost like we're this nation of little individualistic tribes.
Yeah, absolutely.
With fierce independence and individualism.
Yeah, and I think that with social media, now you give voice to that tribalism. It deepens the divisions, because now you have the keyboard courage that throws shots at other tribes.
Right.
And in the absence of relationship and actual conversation, a lot of those cracks are getting divided. And so you have the tightening of tribalism and individualism, the deepening of cracks, and the reinforcing of my identity and my individualism based on the tribe that I'm a part of. And we're fighting that. Everybody's them now. There's no more these United States. There's no more we. There's no more us. It's me, and you and them. And
talk to me as individual believers. Teach me how to think biblically about such a situation as an individual follower of Christ or as an individual congregation.
Yeah, so this is I think we even read the Bible individualistically. So we take promises that are congregational and we make them for me.
Yeah.
And so I know you would know that I'm always trying to use us in we vernacular. I'm always talking about the communal reception of blessings and promises and practices and beliefs and all those kind of things. So I'm trying to push people, and it's hard because of COVID, because of the health thing, right? But I'm really trying to push people into that flesh and blood, congregational, face-to-face, talking with people, not keyboards, not texting, and I'm trying to push people into relationships across whatever lines you've created, right? Because we're in this spot where I only talk to people, we do it in the church, I only talk to people who are like me. And that in terms of the broadest expression of the church and the fullest knowledge of God is death.
Yeah.
Right? If I'm only talking to a mirror, there's
no way to grow.
There's no way to
develop.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is so, and of course, those of us who've been exposed somewhat to biblical languages know that the Greek in the New Testament, very seldom do you have you. It's mostly y'all.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
And all of the biblical writers wrote to y'all.
Yes, all of them. And it really, as a pastor, it's deeply concerning to me, the misappropriation of biblical truths at the for me level. No. It's for you in the context of us, but not for you at the expense of us.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay, so I'm going to switch gears on you because I've got so many questions from today's message.
All right, sorry.
No, that's fine. You're doing great. I'm the one that's like, I want to ask about this.
Sure.
One of the highlights to me that you did this morning is you talked about the names of your 3 kids.
Yes. Yeah.
And you went on quite a ways about that for a reason.
For a reason.
And you defined the meaning of their first name and their middle name, and you went on and on. It was beautiful. And people were rightfully jazzed about that. They're like, wow, that's so cool. Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about that from the standpoint of advice for parents, because my wife and I, we gave our daughters names that were meaningful, either from a biblical or a family perspective, and would talk to them about the meaning of their name as you have.
Yeah.
But what if you're a parent listening to you this morning, and maybe the reason they named their child was because of the favorite actor on a soap opera?
Sure.
And you and I have both met people who were thinking like, did their parents name them when they were high on fentanyl or something?
Sure.
What advice would you give to a parent who suddenly wakes up and goes, that's beautiful, but I've already named my kids. What do I do about it?
Yeah. So for me, parenting, the 4 pillars of parenting here in this, take it or leave it. But one is having a vision for your kids. And that's really what I'm getting at with the name thing, right? That Noah, Emma, and Isaiah, we had a vision for them that involved Jesus and, certain characteristics. So vision, however you want to say it, prayer or dependence, because whatever vision I have, I'm not going to be able to, through sheer force of nature, see it come to fruition. I need God to move.
Right.
Grace, although I am a steward, it's not only up to me. And when they become what God wants them to be, it will not be because of me. It will be because of the grace of God and the aforementioned, hopefully God-given vision and prayer that went along with it. And then fourthly is community. Yeah. The old "it takes a village" idea.
Sure.
But who your kids hang out with, who's investing in your kids, what they're hang out with online or in person, or all of those kind of things. That's all wrapped up in vision. So towards your what if I already, vision, dependence, grace, and community, you can start doing today.
Yeah.
And the beautiful thing about the grace piece is, God's a God of second, third, 500th chances. Mm-hmm. God can redeem, not the goofy name. I mean, they're stuck with that, right? But God can redeem the lack of vision, the lack of intentionality. And, part of the reason that I'm so proud of my kids, and I mean, you obviously know my kids, and is because I can see where they are on the journey to what I'm believing that God has made them, and because they're so representative of the grace of God to me, because I know who I am.
Yeah.
And and they are, you know, they are so many good, and I'm not being self-deprecating. I parenting is so hard, and it's so exposing, and it's so embarrassing at some levels, right? Because you kind of see a reflection of yourself. You see things like, yeah, that's definitely from me, bro. Right? That's from your mom or whatever. And I just so maybe I could throw in, you know, the humility too, and I just see the grace of God all over them. God saved them all. I got to baptize them all, you know, at our spot. It's just to see the hand of God in their life is.
Well, even the grace of God, I think, when you realize that I gave my kid a name that I didn't think about too much.
Yeah, that's right.
But it seems like because of the grace of God, you know, you can look up names and find out what they mean.
Yeah, that's right.
And then you can craft a narrative of your expectations for your child.
It's true.
Whether you had that when you named them or not.
Yeah, that's right.
And, you know, because that's the whole thing. God comes into our story.
That's right.
And we walk with him through that story, and I think we can do that with our kids.
Yeah, and even if the story, you're not happy with the last chapter, ask God to write another one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So here, picking up on that, this whole identity thing because of the names, kind of the climax of what you were talking about today is when you move further into 1 John chapter 3, and you were talking about the fact that I am a child of God.
Yeah.
And you did that in a very emphatic way. I am a child of God, therefore I am a child of God.
Yeah.
And so help me help others. In fact, I just had a conversation in the lobby waiting for you with a young single.
Okay.
And so how do I remember that when I show up for work tomorrow and my boss is yelling at me and I'm single, I don't have kids or a spouse to remind me of that. Yeah. What are some practical pointers that I can have to really keep that present in my mind when the heat is turned up in the reality of real life?
Yeah, I mean, those 4 pillars I gave for parenting, I could make the same application there, right? So one, if you're a single and you're finding yourself in a tough spot, I would always say, who are the people that are around you? I think that God uses his people to keep us near, to keep us supported, to keep us reminded. You know, isolation in the Christian walk, even though I think we're more individualistic than God ever intended us to be, and we're more isolated than God ever intended us to be, and there's a lot of overlap with there. So I'm always trying to push people into community, regardless of where. Yeah. And I think in community, it's still those 3 things. What's your identity? What's the vision that God has for you? Sure. How are you working the dependence piece of that out? And are you a person who can receive the grace of God, right? Right. So are you in a small group? You know, in our ecosystem, have you gone to Growth Track? Are you in a small group? Well, we have environments for that, but it really still boils down to, God, I need a vision from you. God, I need grace from you. God, I need you. And God, I need your people around me to keep me near, to keep me supported, to keep me reminded. And it's what we were talking about a couple weeks ago. You know, I was thinking about the tactical, this is a clunky way to say it, but the tactical elements of what my life would look like if I truly believed that I needed to remember, right? My time would look different. My relationships would look different. Yeah. I would be more intentional about who I let into my life and what I consumed and what I watched and and so, you know, part of the thing with whoever you were talking to is, you know, we don't forget because it's not true. We forget because we're doing things that don't intentionally remind us.
It seems to me, listening to you talk, that one of the problems we have, you mentioned that we are more individualistic than God intended, probably more isolated than God intended, but there's another I that let me just throw out. It may be intentional, because I know there's people that are listening to us and maybe they don't go to Graceway. In fact, there's people that listen to you preach from all over the world.
Yeah, sure.
And maybe they're in a spot where they don't have a solid church. They don't have Growth Track. They don't have small groups. But yet at some point, I think we have kind of developed, at least in our culture, the attitude that, well, the church needs to do that for me.
Yeah, right.
And no, right. You need to be intentional.
Yes.
You need community, and you need to find that whether the church provides it or not.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. And you and I have talked about this, and you've heard me say, you know, people say, can you find a mentor for me? Can you find
Yeah.
that? No. The journey of you knowing why you need one and then finding one is as holy as you getting one, right?
Exactly.
And that's the other thing is we're just so used to, a comedian that I listened to, he said where we're heading, Amazon Prime and it's Prime 2 Day. He said we're heading to Prime Now and Prime Before. Like decide for me before I just hit the button and it's in my hand. We want things we want significant things in the easiest possible way. And that's never how it works.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah.
And it is the journey towards significance that makes the culmination of it significant, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Years ago, there was a motivational speaker by the name of Charlie Tremendous Jones. And just hearing that name brings back bad memories.
Charlie Tremendous Jones.
Charlie Tremendous Jones. And I think he had to be from Texas, but I think he actually was, but I could be wrong about that. But he said something that is so true. He said that 10 years from now, or I'm paraphrasing and maybe I've forgotten it exactly, but he said something that stuck in my mind. 10 years from now, you'll be the same person that you are today, except for the books that you read and the people that you meet.
Yes.
And that is just so true.
That's tremendous, Charlie. Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. And we've got this weird dynamic. We have some Christians who think I have to work for everything God's going to give me, and that's not true.
Right.
And other people say I just open my hands, close my eyes, and God just drops things in. And both have truisms in them. Mm-hmm. But how to your friend, how do I remember? Well, how do you remember anything?
Yeah.
Right. You're intentional about it. You put it in your phone. You have someone remind you. And we don't do that. We don't do that with our faith, with our identity, and then we wonder why we forget.
And that's a really interesting, very tactical, very specific hint that you just dropped about using your phone, setting an alarm on your phone every hour.
Yeah.
We do that for diets.
Yes.
We do that for sleep. We do that for taking pills. Why can't I do that to remind myself that I am God's favorite, as you like to say? I'm God's child.
Yeah. We, you and I read a book a handful of years ago now at this point, talking about the different times of prayer that some of these monastic communities would do, 4 different times a day. And, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, one as I'm getting home from work, and then one very late at night. And for years, I have had in my phone that time of day in prayer. And it's as simple as, obviously I don't always do it perfectly, but it's as simple as, okay, Lord, XYZ has happened, XYZ is coming, let your will be done, let me hear what I need to hear, do what I need to do. And so for me, that's a very simple way that I try to remember.
Somebody had asked the question, so how do you strip away decades of worldliness? And you were talking about how marketing today is just bringing us to a state of superficiality. How do you strip that away? And I think the answer you just gave us, you become very intentional about remembering who you are. In fact, when you said that, I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. You have 4 alarms on your phone that remind you of those prayer times. There is a very well-known youth ministry in this city, and in their office building, they actually have bells that ring at certain times of day, and that's everybody's call to prayer. And I thought, wow, and I know that here you have a Thursday morning prayer meeting for the staff.
We do.
And so it's being very intentional. It's more than just words.
Yeah, and when you said the call to prayer thing, obviously we're involved a lot in the Middle East and in different cultures, and there's a significant world religion that, if you're in that part of town, there is a daily call to prayer.
You will get up when it's time to get up.
That's right. And you will face a certain way, and you will say a certain prayer. And we've a little bit thrown the baby out with the bathwater because we say we don't want rote religion, and of course we don't.
Right.
But there are rhythms, whatever the nicer word is, there are rhythms and habits of relationship. I talk to my wife every day. Like it's not rote. It's,
whether she's here or not.
Yes.
You're going to FaceTime her. You're going to
And when she's not here, I talk to her more.
Exactly.
And so just the relational rhythms that will help us remember But we're really on like a once or twice a week deal with God. And I'm not, it's not shaming, it's just the reality of it. I work my tail off 5 or 6 days a week. I crash into church. I go out, I watch the game, I do my thing, and then I'm curious why, God feels
Neither of us come from a liturgical background,
right.
But yet, when you really stop and think about it, all of the elements of that were started for a reason.
Yes. Yeah.
And many times the reasons are you're dealing with people who lived in an agrarian society, and nobody read or wrote for the most part.
Right.
And so those rituals were established as points of contact.
Yes.
And were very meaningful.
Very meaningful. And, it's the biblical idea of, there's lots of different ways, but wineskins is something that, God talks about. Just trying out new wineskins, trying out new habits, trying out, I'm going to put this in my phone, I'm going to read this book. And God sometimes interrupts. Mm-hmm. And it's wonderful when he does. But I have found the most often that God shows up is when I have prepared time to listen.
Right.
And it's amazing. It's not always. I read my Bible every day. I do the prayer thing. I do group. I do all the things that I ask people to do. And there are times it is as dry as a bone. Yeah. But that's not the point.
And people don't understand. They think I had a dry day. Well, me too.
Yeah, that's right. I've had 3. Or during COVID, I had months.
Yeah. So you get up tomorrow and have another day.
That's right. We get up tomorrow and we have another day, and we say, God, your will be done in this day. But I'm going to create the environment in my life where you can interrupt, and where I'm going to regularly be inviting you. Yeah. And I just have found that when I regularly invite God, he tends to show up. Yeah. And sometimes he interrupts us, which sometimes we're glad that he does. But I'm not banking on the interruption for the interaction. Right? Yeah, it's kind of like, I know that God works miracles, but I'm going to plan like a miracle is not going to happen. Right. And if it does, I'll be very grateful for that. I'll be very grateful. Yeah, we pray for people like that when they're sick. Our executive pastor is quite ill with COVID. Yes. And we know that God could restore him immediately. Yes. And we believe that can happen. Yes. But we're gonna pray and plan. Yes. Like his life depends on it. We're glad he's in the hospital. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I don't want him to stay home and just say, "Well, God, why aren't you healing?" No, go to the hospital. Yes. And we'll pray that God heals you on the spot in the hospital, or that he uses doctors and medicine. So if this were a movie and the credits were beginning to run. I'm saying that because we're almost out of time. Okay. But sometimes movies will have like outtakes. Yeah. So if after preaching twice this morning, do you have any outtakes from your sermon that you would like to share with people? Things that you wish you could have had time to say? Oh, wow. What would you say? Going to say things I wish I hadn't said. Well, you could do that too. That's really interesting. Yeah, I honestly, a lot of this is the point of this environment. It's kind of an outtake environment, but I think what we started to get at of this simplicity of walking with God that is habitual and rhythmic, and that God shows up in the mundane much more than in the miraculous. Yeah. And to try to encourage people to walk with God in the mundane, in the ordinary, in the daily, and in the walk, to have ways and people and resources to remind themselves of the very simple realities of their faith. Yeah. It drives me, you and I have talked about this, drives me a little bit crazy how, the all of these Greek words and all of this, but the almost ignoring of, I'm a child of God. Yeah. I'm loved by God. Yeah. I would love people at our church to have a mundane, meat and potatoes, ordinary walk with God, that he sometimes shows up and does something. I think I told you one time about the book that I read, the Theology of the Ordinary. Yeah, I'm the one that told you about it. Yeah, okay, all right, yeah. And so you remind me of the athlete that makes the highlight reel. Sure. It's because he has spent years doing the mundane routine in the groove. Yes. Whether you feel like it or not, you're on the field, you're going through your rhythm, got your rhythm, got your groove, and that's why he makes the highlight. That's right. Yeah. So we have to figure out a way especially the more kind of celebrity the evangelical church. That's dangerous.
Yeah.
It's a dangerous
That's a bad
space
syndrome.
for us. It's a bad syndrome for us because, we all want the shiny light and the miraculous thing, but I think it's important. Jesus came as a carpenter. Like the tactile, the agrarian, the simple, the blue collar,
Yeah. We used to have a theology of work in the church.
We did.
And we've kind of lost that.
We have kind of lost it. Now it's like the moment.
Well, that's probably a good spot to wrap it up. Back to the basics, man. Keep it simple, stupid.
Yes, that's right. That's right. That's right.
And just realize, I'm a child of God, and I'm going to pray. I'm going to read my Bible.
Yeah.
And it's going to happen.
That's right. It's good.
Pastor Tim, thank you, man.
Right.
As always, it's good.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning into the Graceway Experience. Hope we can talk again sometime.